I think the Transformers community is at a weird turning point right now. And it's not just people complaining about prices again. Something actually shifted in 2026 because for the first time in a long time, collectors aren't just talking online. They're changing how they buy, skipping figures, waiting for sale, dropping reorders, only buying favorites, or just leaving waves completely untouched. And what makes this interesting is a trigger point everyone keeps pointing at the new pricing, especially when people look at something like the Titan Grimlock and immediately start calling it the Super Mecha Death Yoshi. That's not just a joke, it's frustration turning into humor. But here's the important part before we go further. Yes, prices going up is not random. Yes, inflation is real. Yes, costs have increased since 2007. But the real argument is not why did prices go up. The real argument is these prices go up more than they should have relative to what we're getting. So let's actually break this down properly with real numbers. First, go over the inflation. What prices should be in 2026 in real math? Let's use 2007, the peak early Bayverse era, as a baseline. We will apply the cumulated US inflation from 2007 to 2026, which is roughly about 58% or 65% total inflation depending on the CPI routing. To keep this clean, we use a middle estimate, so around 60% cumulative inflation from 2007 to 2026. Now, let's convert own prices into modern fair value equivalents. In 2007, dealer class figures cost $9.99 or $11.99, which means around $10 to $12. Adjusted for 2026 inflation with a 60% increase, the fair 2026 price should be between $16 to $19. 2007 Voyager class, the price was $20 or $19.99. Adjusted for inflation, the fair 2026 price should be $32. For 2007 liters, the price was $40 or $39.99. Adjusted for inflation, the fair 2026 price should be $64. So if we stop the conversation here, something important becomes clear. Modern 33 pricing is not wildly out the inflation range because today we're seeing roughly for dealers between $25 to $28, for Voyagers it's between $40 to $45, or for leaders it's between $55 to $65. So on paper, that actually looks somewhat aligned. So if inflation explains part of it, why is everyone still so angry? So the next real problem is that the value did not scale with the price. This is where the argument completely shifts, because collectors aren't reacting to inflation charge, they're reacting to experience. And the experience feels like this. We are paying more, but we're getting less. And that's the core tension. Because while prices increased about 60% since 2007, collector perception is that value did not increase by 60%. In some cases, it feels like it went the opposite direction. What collectors noted immediately is that when people open modern 33 figures, they notice things instantly: less paint, fewer accessory, lighter fuse, more visible keyboard, simpler engineering in hidden areas, reduced premium finish, more unpainted gray plastic. Most of the figures are now way smaller than how they used to be in 2007 or 2009. Back then, we paid those prices for giant figures, especially for leader class. Remember the Revenge of the Fallen leader class Optimus Prime? That was one of the holy grail, and it just feels so much better than the current leader class that we have now. Not only that, the plastic quality was super good back then too. That figures last for quite a long time, even after being played for a long time. Not to mention that for 33 figures, they even cut the box. We used to have extremely nice box with actual backdrop, and now they ship out, they took that away from us too. Now collectors can't even save the box anymore. Once you take the figures out of the box, you can't really put it back and display it inside the box anymore. So take those into consideration, and then we look at the price. People have to think, why does it feel like less toys than older figures, but cost almost double? That's where inflation stopped being convincing emotionally. Because inflation explains the pricing, it does not explain the perception of downgrade. So this is what I call the shrinkflation. The shrinkflation argument is what actually broke people. This is the part most counter arguments miss. People say, oh, it's just inflation, everything is just more expensive naturally. But collectors are seeing something different. Higher price, same or smaller size, less pen, fewer accessories, and lower plastic quality. Even worse backpack, worse backdrop, and box. No inbox collector values. So that combination is what people call shrinkflation. And shrinkflation is psychologically way stronger than inflation because inflation is invisible. Shrinkflation is physical. You literally see less figures in hand, less paint on the figures, less stuff in the box. The box looks ugly, more empty space, more compromise. That's why people say modern Voyagers sometimes feel like older dealers instead of presents. Even if engineering is technically more advanced, some people will say that, but engineering is better now. And this is a fair pushback. Modern 33 figures often have more shrink accuracy, cleaner robot proportion, more complex transformation, better CAD precision, better articulation and engineering. So yes, in some ways, the figures are more advanced. But here's the issue collectors bring up. If engineering improved, why did everything else get cut? Because instead of feeling like better engineering and better presentation, it often feels like better engineering wrapped inside a reduced budget. So the improvements is real, but it doesn't fully translate into perceived value. Next, the third-party effects, the most important shift. This is where things get serious for Hasbro long-term, because the comparison is no longer just between 33 versus older Transformer figures from Takara Tomy. It is now 33 versus third-party figures or KO figures out there. And that changes everything. Because when collectors see $60 leader class versus like $70 or $100 third-party figures, and the third-party version offers more paint, more accessory, metal part, better proportion, better finish, better presentation, and the official product start looking like the budget option. That is a perception shift that Hasbro really doesn't want, and it's getting worse because KO and third-party companies are now fixing proportion, adding paint up, improving articulation, increasing size, upgrading accuracy, sometimes even surpassing the official design direction. So the argument is no longer official is safer. It becomes, why am I paying premium prices for a compromise? Take Titan Grimlock as an example. Why this debate exploded. Titan Grimlock basically became the symbol of this entire argument. Because at a price point of 200 plus price point, just taking straight from Amazon, or $190 on Hasbro Pulse, expectations are no longer just toy expectations. They are premium collectible expectations. And that means near perfect scope, minimal compromise, strong engineering polish, no obvious shortcut, full premium paint treatment. But when fans see this, they look at the keyboard compromise, they look at the hip gaps, simplified section, limited articulation areas, and hollowing in certain spots with unpainted area. The reaction becomes very harsh, very fast. Not because the figure is bad, but because the price level demands perfection in collector's mind. That's why the Super Mecha Death Yoshi joke stuck. It represents the hype level versus execution gap. Next is a real core issue. It's not just the price, it's trust. At this point, the debate is no longer just about money. It's about trust. Because collectors are no longer assuming higher price will be equal better products. They now question it every time. And once that happens, every review gets dissected. Where is the paint missing? What got hollow? What was simplified? What was cut? What used to exist before and just disappear now? That mindset doesn't come from nowhere. It's come from repeated perception of value not matching expectation. So, are 33 figures too expensive now? Here's the honest conclusion. If we look purely as inflation math, prices are actually roughly justified. Deluxe, Voyager, and leader pricing increase are not wildly outside of the CPI expectation from 2007 to 2026. But if we look at the collector experience, value perception has not kept up at all. And that gap is what people are reacting to. So the real answer is, study series is not just too expensive. It is priced like a premium line, but often perceived like a cost-optimized one. And that mismatch is what causing burnout. But I want to hear from you guys on this one. Are you still pre-ordering study series like before? Or do you think inflation fully explains the price increase? Or do you think the value just isn't matching what we're paying anymore?